You're listening to Mr. Allard's Neighborhood. Small town feel with big time ideas. After all, you are entitled to Brad's opinion. Here's your host, Brad Allard.
Well, how y'all doing today? I'm not going to be giving my opinion today. I'm going to let these young ladies give their opinion today. We got Erica Vyers and Gracie Gray from Reach across Johnson County, and they got a big seminar coming up a week from Saturday. The Pathway, right? Everything's
Yes.
a pathway.
Yes.
I understand they also double as a church, but it seems like everything's going on at Pathway. There's I think was it the 20th. Yeah, there's going to be something from the Chamber of Commerce.
The Full Circle Women's Club.
Yeah, Power Heels and all that, and then I think there's something going on in the October, but I can't remember what it is. I slept since then, but. Anyway, we're going to talk about their seminar. We're going to talk about mental health in Johnson County. We talk about the big grants you got because now you're expanding your services, not just to Johnson County, but she says, Gracie told me, that you're going to Hill County, right?
Yes.
Yes, there'll be another one of what I do in Hill.
Well, good, because if you know anything about Hill County, they sure could use it. But same with Ellis County, where my parents live. They'll tell you there's a need for it. Of course, I bet every county could tell you that, right? There's a need for it.
It is everywhere.
Yeah, but this seminar is, what time does it start?
It starts at 9. The program starts at 9. We're going to open the doors at 8. We're going to have some breakfast refreshments. Come get your T-shirt, your tote bag. Check out all of our vendors. We're going to have some raffles going.
Well, we'll get into those details. I just want to make sure I got the right time and date because sometimes I mess that up. But anyway, I'm trying to get everybody shared here. And while we'll do this, we're going to talk about our sponsors. So thank you to Otto, who's very, very generous with a lot of the community activities at our place and at Gina's Pizza. I bet I've been at our place as often as anybody else has been in the last few weeks because I do a lot of my podcast business there or at Gina's. And not just because he's a sponsor, but because the food's good and the service is good and it's a good environment. Nobody bugs you, that kind of thing. It's a good place to go hang out. So I recommend either place for business meetings or lunch or meeting clients or whatever else. Also, I could say the same thing about Wild. If you like to have a cigar and a drink in a quiet atmosphere, Wild has a place for you. They have a conference room that I believe could seat up to about a dozen comfortably. And it's a great quiet place. I've gone there in the afternoon a couple times for a little sponsor care, if you will, check in on Nathan and Chris and whatnot. And I see stuff like that, business going on. People there, maybe individually or in groups, having business meetings or on Zoom or something like that. So it's a good place to do it. It gets you out of the house. A lot of people working from home get a little bit cabin fever, I bet. I guess y'all don't have anything like that going on. Anyway, also, thank you to our friends over at Old Pro Roofing. The rain is good for John because people find out, oh, yes, oh, dear, I have a leak in my roof. I've been telling people, dadgummit, you need to find out before if you need a new roof or new repairs or anything like that. When it's raining, it's not the time. But yesterday, we was talking to his dad. We know Greg Williams. And, Eric and I are friends with him at B&I. And basically, the phone starts ringing off the hook when it starts raining. It's like, you should have called earlier. And you call that number at 817-734-2756. Also, our friend Jeff Kelly at the Wethington Agency, the real estate guru of Burleson, he has a couple properties I know that are for sale. One in Alvarado, and I think one by the tollway. If they haven't been sold already, I know they were available last week. Also, has about 3 homes that I know of that have been forwarded on Facebook. He probably has more. So call him at 817-781-0546 or at 817-720-6300. Taylor, you want to put up the Railroaders because they got a big playoff series coming up this weekend. They're playing the team from Illinois, the AA team from Chicago. So the Railroaders have made the playoffs, and they got a home series coming up this weekend. So you want to check that out. You like the Railroaders. Everybody likes the Railroaders because they do all these things for us, right?
Yes, we thank them. They also donated a basket to Rise.
Well, there you go. With like baseball-related gear?
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've been, when I go do a little sponsor care over there with Kay Goodell, and they have several of these things. I saw like a whole table full of these baskets, and they had all these names of different groups in here and in Cleburne and whatever else. So they're very, very proactive about doing these things, and I really do appreciate that about them. I'm still trying to get all the shares here before we, get on with it because I'm really bad about this. I really am. But we're doing it. Here we go. Now, we're good. All right. Here's the nice new logo, Reach across Johnson County. How long has this program been going on? I mean, I first heard of it when you joined BNI, but
I think our Johnson County specific program started about 4 to 5 years ago.
Would have been 5 years ago with the last grant cycle.
right before COVID. Good timing.
Yes. But so our main agency, Reach Council, they've been around since 1980.
I want to say 85 or 87.
Yeah, I think it's 85, but they started in Ellis County in Midlothian.
Well, I think I was kind of half joking about the COVID timing, but actually it is good timing because I think we're only now starting to grasp the reality of what COVID did to our society and economy. I mean, there's still ramifications going on, and I'm
Absolutely.
sure in the mental health area as well, but I'm talking about economically and socially, and, you know, I read stuff about how people are, I don't know, less willing to be involved. They just, I don't know what the reasons are, but I'm sure it had a massive negative impact on mental health across the country. Do y'all still deal with that specifically, or is it just
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, I find myself not wanting to get out of the house near as much, you know, being more of a homebody, where before I would never stay home.
Yeah.
Well, and like you said, they put some data out from what's happened since COVID, and they estimate that 1 in 3 people feel isolated or lonely.
Well, and I'm reading also that a lot of people in the workforce, just if they don't work from home, they're not going to work. And a lot of it has to do with not just they found out how convenient it was and they could work in their pajamas or something like that, but they're psychologically just not ready to go to a office environment of some sort.
I mean, socializing can be exhausting.
Yeah.
And if you haven't done it in a long time, it makes you anxious. All these different emotions are going on, and it just makes you not want to do it.
Right. And I don't know if we really are going to know the impact of COVID until maybe a decade has passed and we look back on it. I do know that when I date things in my mind, it's like pre-COVID or post-COVID. You know, when did I buy this car? Oh, it was pre-COVID. Or when did I do this? Oh, we did it after COVID. And I know in the education field, it has had terrible effects, and not just on academic performance, but on the psychology of the kids. You know, I still have friends in the business, so to speak, and it's really impacted them a lot. And it's impacted Hill College. It's impacted Dallas Baptist, where I both work, because you have a lot more students that are just, if it's not online, they're not going to do it because they don't want to leave the house, or they have too much anxiety in a classroom or too much anxiety in a mass campus atmosphere. You know, so I know that Hill College enrollment is a little bit down, but it's the classroom numbers are a lot down because they've shifted to online so much. And I have my opinions about online, but it's neither here nor there. This seminar, what are y'all going to focus on specifically?
This year, our theme is Rise Together, talking about the power of community and, you know, how when we come together, we're so much stronger than whenever we're apart and doing things on our own. And just, you know, learning how to build connection with others, learning how to go get involved in different social groups and activities in your community, get you out of the house and get you just, you know, around other people, feeling loved on and uplifted.
Well, here's the flyer. If you would put it back on the screen for us, Taylor. September 14th. It's, like you said, 9 o'clock, no cost to attend. That's what I really like about this, is that, you know, I know there's some expense, but I hope we all have been sufficiently given grant money or donations or whatnot to make this work. No cost to attend. And I'm looking just at the various things, and I see one, for the first time, you have youth sessions.
Yes, that's something we're bringing this year. Last year, we had a lot of youth attend. And, you know, they told us they wanted more ways to learn. And so we wanted to give them their own sessions that were actually for them, you know, spoken in their language about the topics that we hear that are the most concerning for them, which a lot of it is, you know, suicide, depression, anxiety. Those are huge right now in our youth.
Yes, they are. And when I was, you know, my last few years of teaching, one of the negative side effects, if you will, of online research is that kids would be going through what a lot of kids go through. I mean, we all went through youth, and we all, you know, felt like we were nuts when we were kids, right? You know, we all go through those periods, and not necessarily we were mentally unhealthy. We were just growing and changing into adolescence or whatever else. But sometimes these kids think there's something wrong with them because of these feelings, and they Google up stuff, and they Google up symptoms, and they, oh my goodness, I have that, and they really are just 15 years old. Right. There's a difference
Yes.
between being a confused teenager and needing mental health.
Well, and when you're that age, I think you struggle a lot with identity.
Right.
And so if you can name that feeling that you're feeling, it, it gives you a place that you might belong or feel that you belong. And so I think a lot of kids are maybe not getting the appropriate help they need because they are self-diagnosing and not getting right information. I mean, we've got information at our fingertips, but how much of it's really, accurate?
When I look back on my youth, and we had all the usual struggles and tensions and whatever else. But I think that was a normal part of growing up. And just like adults, a normal part of being an adult, stress and sometimes anxious moments and stuff like that. And you might need, I don't know, somebody to talk to. You might need a temporary place to give it an outlet. But it didn't necessarily mean you're mentally unhealthy. But I think a lot of kids now think of themselves as mentally unhealthy because they see on Facebook or something, or I guess Facebook as far as old timers now.
Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram or TikTok or whatever. And they see all these young people their age, living the party life and all this other stuff. And then you see also in high school the emphasis on, being in the right crowd and being the star athlete and being the prom queen and all this
Wearing
other
the right
stuff.
clothes.
Yeah, and so if you're not living that life, there's something wrong with you. And that feeling, I think, has been around since forever. But that doesn't mean that some of these kids really do need some mental health, some sort of treatments of some sort.
Yeah, and a big thank you to Christine. She will, she's a friend of ours, and she will be leading one of the youth sessions, and actually it is on identifying emotions.
And another thing that was a common in my profession also is that parents would say, well, my kid is acting up a little bit, so let's put him on Ritalin or some other performance-type drug, some sort of, I don't know what kind you call it, just, some sort of drug like ADHD-related medicine. I was always reluctant to even get involved in that conversation. I wasn't a professional, and second of all, I thought sometimes people reached for the medicine cabinet a little too quickly. Really, a lot of these things could be dealt with through just regular therapy or just, process of maturing,
That is above my pay grade, I think, to professionally speak on. But personally, I do agree. I think that therapy should be more of your first attempt at solving a problem. But it's not always the easiest, having to go to weekly therapy and doing this and that.
Well, I never diagnosed a kid, and our counselors at school did not recommend things because of the liabilities involved and whatnot. And I didn't do it because I'm not an expert, and I didn't want to be involved in saying, well, this kid needs Ritalin or something like that, and it turns out to be harmful to him. I would, I always joked about my dad's solution for attention deficit disorder was a swift kick in the backside, liberally applied. But I guess that was then. Now we're a little bit more evolved, I guess.
Right. I do like to see the evolution of it, though, with the fidget toys and the different little just things that you can mess with. It really does help focus some kids, because sometimes you're expecting 5 and 6 year olds to sit down and be still and pay attention for the school day, and it's like they've got all this energy pent up. They need to be able to move around and learn.
I know a lot of the educational techniques that over the course of my career there, they would bring to us. Not all of them were very effective. Some of them were. And one of the things that they said were more effective was more tactile type learning, and as opposed to sit down and whatnot. Now, I'm teaching juniors and seniors, in many cases, college level courses, dual enrollment and AP, and they had a little bit more focus. But that didn't mean I didn't have activities so that they can get and interact with each other and whatever else, because you had to have that go on. But maybe this is just a suggestion. I'm sure some parents at your seminar are going to want to know what to do about their kid in school. Do you have something like that for the parents?
As far as
like how to deal with kids that are having trouble in school with mental issues?
I would definitely seek professional help. For youth, like you said, it can be quite touchy. For instance, the ADD, ADHD has to be diagnosed by a psychologist for that age before they'll treat them with medication.
Well, we have a diagnostician, and they can make the recommendations, but they can't prescribe it, certainly. But they could say, this is what I think you should pursue. But the rest of us, we don't want to touch that because, by the way, y'all start talking. This is my Lowe's guy here. Hang on.
Well, we will have a session about the family dynamics and how to increase your connection. And so it's going to be done by the Jordan Elizabeth Harris Foundation. They're going to talk about just, how to build that connection with your child as a parent and how to, as they grow older, keep an open line of communication and just be able to work things through as a conversation instead of, kind of separating as the child gets older and turns into a teenager and all those feelings are there. I know I went through that with my parents.
And then we're going to have Angel Ayala. He's an LPC author. He is also former military, and he will be talking about
substance use in the family.
Sorry, yes, that wasn't the word I was looking for, but yes.
Y'all, there are so many moving parts to this conference. It's hard to keep everything lined up in your head.
Well, that wasn't actually Lowe's delivering something to us. It was a friend calling, and but no, he's a good man. So no, it's somebody from a church, normally would love to talk to him, but this isn't the best time. But anyway, I'll just assume that we're talking about the same thing.
Well, we're talking about our speakers, kind of introducing. Angel is going to be representing the veteran population. He has struggled and has a book on recovery and addiction and how it affects the family.
Also PTSD is a lot better diagnosed than it used to be.
Better treated as well.
Better treated, and I know of some people that have PTSD that aren't veterans. We associate it with veterans returning from Afghanistan or whatnot, but it also just affects people in the same way when they've had very traumatic events and stressful events.
Absolutely.
First responders also have what they call cumulative PTSD, is where you've been exposed to so many traumatic events that they start building and they start forming those same symptoms and problems. Also, I know a lot of nurses that ended up getting PTSD
How could you
during
not?
COVID.
Well, how could you not, working like in the emergency room, and not get it? I have a young friend in my Sunday school class, and she's in administration in the hospital, but she deals with nurses, and she is a nurse. And they say that that's an issue, particularly when you have like outbreaks, not just of COVID, but of, just inundated in the ERs with flu or whatever else, and they just see this trauma over and over again, that they have a lot of issues with PTSD. I'm glad it's better. I've been talking to a gentleman, Sandy Mason, the American Legion, and they do some things with veterans with PTSD, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing about this town, is that we have these kind of resources.
We do, and we're going to have some of them there at the conference that day, one of them being Veterans Freedom Retreat. It's an awesome place for veterans to go and get involved with other veterans and, just kind of get to take a step away from your everyday life and just enjoy yourself.
Well, while I was on the phone, did you talk about Cheyenne Davis? Because you mentioned her earlier about some of the things she may be talking about.
We have not, but she is returning. I think she's probably one of our only returning speakers that we've ever had, but we had such positive feedback from her, and she is local. She pastors there at Pathway.
Oh, she works for Pathway.
Yes.
Well, it's very convenient. She doesn't have far to travel.
She's phenomenal, and she just really told her story and really spoke to some of our attendees.
And what is her story?
She is in recovery herself.
Okay.
I unfortunately missed her session last year because I was cleaning up.
It was amazing.
So,
I didn't get to hear all of it either, but.
Right. But yeah, she's in recovery herself. And this year she's going to be talking about what does it mean to be together.
It's interesting, though, the phrase you use, in recovery, not recovered, because it's an ongoing, really, lifestyle.
Choice every day.
Yeah, it's a
every
lifestyle.
Single day, yeah.
Yeah, it's, it may have happened something, I don't know how long it happened for her, but it may be a decade ago, but you're still in recovery. And she'll, and that's, I think, a lot of people misunderstand about addiction. There's a reason why they call it that, right?
Right.
Exactly.
And I don't know the biology of it, the chemistry of it. But am I right in saying that some people are more prone for addiction than others?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and not necessarily for psychological reasons, but for biological reasons.
Genetics.
Yeah.
If you have a family member that struggles with addiction, you're 50% more likely to struggle with it yourself.
Well, I know in my extended family for the last generations, I had, a great uncle that was an alcoholic, and a second cousin was an alcoholic, whatever. It wasn't something that was like omnipresent in my family.
Right.
So I never really worried about it. But it's like, I don't want to be the one that triggers it in the younger generations.
Right. Well, and it if you're predisposed for it, that doesn't mean that you're just destined to grow up and have an issue. It's your environment, the way that you grew up. There's a lot of determining factors, and two people could try it just to try something, and one person could be like, that's not for me, I'm not going to do it again, and the next person starts that cycle of addiction, and it starts from there, and it becomes to where it changes the chemicals in your brain and the way that your brain actually perceives things.
Well, I just think that's a real big deal now, because might as well give a promo for next week's show. Next Thursday, I'm Colin Gregory with the Burleson Police, and he's bringing a recovering addict from fentanyl. And y'all are working with the Burleson Police and Colin, right?
Yes, we're working on an opioid campaign just to educate and bring awareness to what's going on here, because it is here.
Oh, yeah. When I started teaching here in the high school, at least in 1990, I would hear things, and I would hear it more than, just about marijuana. That was, prevalent in every, institution in Texas, it seems like. But it also about opioids, synthetic drugs and whatever else. And it seems to be going way out of control in the last 5 to 7 years. COVID. Also, I have to say, some of the less than honorable tactics of the pharmaceutical industry, and some of the doctors that willingly prescribed overdoses, that was part of the problem. Also, the fact that you can manufacture it, also a big part, and that's my political comment for today. With an open border like we've had, we're going to have a fentanyl increase. Period.
Absolutely, not just fentanyl. There's carfentanil. There's other stuff that I don't even know how to pronounce that's coming over, and it's getting mixed with things that look quote unquote normal, like a Xanax or a Percocet, or even the vape cartridges with THC in them. They're putting other things in those because it's cheaper, and that's what they care about, is making money.
And they're also trying to create a client base.
Absolutely.
Because fentanyl, I understand, is highly addictive.
It is.
It is cheap.
It's cheap, and
highly addictive. You can manufacture a ton of it without a great deal of expense. And of course, we have reports about how China is dumping it in our markets and here and all this other stuff. Now, the odd thing is, fentanyl originally had a useful purpose, right? It was used in surgeries, right?
Well, and it still is.
It still is.
But under the care of a doctor who knows exactly how much to give you. You're in a safe environment. A lot of times for cancer patients who have gone through chemo and radiation and are in a lot of pain, or for just severe trauma victims that are just in a lot of pain, it is a pain medicine.
But they're two different.
Are they?
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
it's different.
If a doctors are going to prescribe something like fentanyl, isn't there a concern they may get addicted? I hear stories all the time of people getting addicted to Vicodin and things of that nature.
It is, and I believe like you mentioned before, that in years past they've overprescribed opioids, and that was a problem, because once they kept getting it for their knee pain or an injury that they had, and then they get cut off, and then where do they get it?
Yeah.
Well, and I think too, on the bottle, a lot of times, even with hydrocodone, if you get a tooth pulled, whatever it is, it'll say take every 4 hours as needed. And if 4 hours rolls around, sure, you could take another one, but do you really need it? Are you in pain? And just monitoring how often you're taking it when you even are prescribed it, because it can be very addictive. And if you've got that predisposition and other things going on that you maybe are already addicted to something else, you are more likely to possibly struggle with it as well.
I've been reading a lot about what happened to Matthew Perry, and I'm not familiar with ketamine. So what am I talking about here?
Ketamine is a synthetic drug. It's a horse tranquilizer. Essentially, it renders you, what are the words? It's like it relaxes your muscles so much that you can't move.
And it becomes like a euphoric experience, like out-of-body experience.
You mean you're taking horse medicine so you can basically become totally immobile?
Well, I think that's where it originated,
right.
or where it started as. But then there's, of course, they have like the
versions
that things start as, and then they kind of morph into something else.
And so this ketamine,
illegal substances and such.
Well, tell me what you're describing is similar to I don't know, it sounds like cocaine almost. Like you take it and
it's more of a downer. It's a depressant.
Depressant, okay. I got it backwards then. So basically this ketamine that Matthew Perry was being prescribed was designed not for any kind of illness he had or whatnot, or any kind of treatment he was going through. It was basically for that euphoric sensation. And apparently now the texts have come out and they have indicted some of the doctors that were prescribing it to him. And and some of their text messages are basically just mocking him for his addiction and how they're wringing him out for all the money they can. I just thought that was just grotesque.
And I feel like in that situation, I feel like it's even harder because that money is there, and they potentiate that addiction. They're enabling that sort of behavior.
There was a big article in the Wall Street Journal a couple of days ago about his supplier, and and the party lifestyle she led and all this other stuff. And she was addicted, not just Matthew Perry, but other Hollywood types are also our client base, and they wanted that ketamine so they can unwind and kind of leave their body, so to speak. You're talking about that euphoric sensation. And
yeah.
I can't put myself in that mental position. I mean, I understand stress and all this other stuff and trying to find a way to relieve it, but I can't find myself in a mindset where I would skirt death that often just for that euphoric sensation. I don't know.
And I think
people
they're not in the right mindset. They aren't thinking about what could happen. They're not thinking about, like, they might know that fentanyl's out there, but they're not thinking about the overdosing. They're thinking about being able to feel that feeling again, being able to scratch that itch, take that craving away, whatever those, I don't know the withdrawal symptoms for ketamine, but I imagine they can't be good if you're doing it pretty, consistently. But that's what it's about, is trying to make yourself just feel normal again. Because after using something for so long, that is your normal.
And I'm sure so many people don't start that way. You don't, jump in and start breaking the law by robbing a bank. I mean, you might, but I mean, I think it starts with smaller things and addictive personality. I think he's had other struggles before.
Oh yeah, he talked about he was in rehab 17 times in his autobiography he wrote a year prior to him dying. It was in and out of him. And I read about some other celebrity, I wish I could remember who it was a young woman. She's been in 28 times. I'm like, 28 times you go into rehab, you'd think one of them would take. But
it's real disheartening. I mean, for them, like she said, it's there's something else there. It could be traumas. It could be chemical makeup. I mean, it could be when you start at a young age, I feel like it potentiates that behavior and it makes that behavior normal for you. You don't know how to be without it.
Right. And, I have a family member who he completed a 30-day cycle at rehab and he came out and he thought he was cured. And he went back to his everyday life and he recently has relapsed. And I think being real with yourself and knowing that, being in recovery, like we said before, is an everyday struggle.
Right.
And it just, if it takes 28 times and you're still sober at the end of the day, then, go 29 times, it just
but that
keep working at it. Yeah.
29th day is just as hard as the 30th day will be the 31st day, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
What do y'all know the relapse rate of people that go through treatments? I mean, is there a percentage out there, or
I couldn't. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, and I can't give you any of those, but I know it. I think it takes at least 3 times of quitting.
Really?
I mean, at least, yes.
Okay, so one session may not be enough to train your body and mind not be addicted. I guess.
I feel like that's why it's so important to talk about this to our younger generation. Like, it may be okay for this person to have a drink at a party and be fine, but you really should watch your drink intake because Uncle so-and-so struggled or your grandfather had an alcohol addiction, and talk about those things with our generation because, it may be okay for their friend to have drinks every now and then at parties, but for them, it may be the thing that gets them started on an addiction themselves.
It says between 40 and 60% of those with a substance use disorder relapse. And I knew it was going to be high, but that's really high.
I thought it was going to be at least a third, but that is higher than I thought it'd be, yes.
Yeah, and there is, it's a lot of range. 40 to 60 is it's a pretty big range, It just, again, addiction does not affect any two people the exact same way.
Yeah, and which is more common now? Is it chemical-related opioid, fentanyl, or alcohol?
Common is still alcohol.
Okay.
It's still alcohol, but I think, of course, we hear fentanyl all the time in the media and everything. It's more talked about, but at the end of the day, alcohol is still our biggest struggle, especially with the youth.
And it's easier to access because it's legal.
Yeah, right. And maybe the parents have it in the cabinet and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Of course, you talked about, I remember last time you were here on the show, you talked about how difficult it was to try to get these kids to consider weed to be something to avoid when their own parents are doing it.
Exactly.
Because, my generation, the 70s, the vice of choice was dope, was weed, which grass, Mary Jane, whatever we called it back then, But, but a lot of that had to do with the drinking age being 18. It's like, who can't get beer, right? And so they had to do something that was a little bit beyond, the legality, because they wanted to live on the edge a little bit. And then towards the latter part of my high school, the really cool kids started getting into cocaine. I'm like, where are they getting cocaine? They're 17 years old, but apparently they could find it. I never, honestly, I'm not bragging on myself. I never was tempted by marijuana or any type of drugs like that. And the only thing for me personally, I do need to make sure I don't overindulge in alcohol sometimes. And that's, that's my fight. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not addicted, but I know that I could be if I let myself go.
Right.
And so I always have to watch that because I don't want to become that. And I just, fortunately, I've been able to avoid it. But it's not everybody can,
Yeah. And like Erica said, having that access. Gas stations around some parts of Johnson County do not ID. That's one thing these grants are allowing us to do is we're going to be able to do compliance checks. And so we kind of would go into different stores and just make sure that they're following the protocol so that stuff isn't going into the wrong hands.
I'd like to switch gears and talk about the mental health part of it because that's really the focus of your seminar. I just got interested in the addiction part because of what I read today and yesterday about what's coming over the border, and I know it's affecting Johnson County, and I know our location here right outside the Metroplex on I-35 makes us a prime distribution center practically.
Yes.
And but as far as the mental health aspect of your program, that's the bulk of it, right?
For this upcoming Rise, yes, we are all about mental health and well-being. And when we say mental health, please don't think that you have to have a diagnosis. We all have mental health just like we have physical health.
Well, it's it's like when you have physical health, you get the flu, you're sick for a few days, you recover. Mental health, I've come to discover, similar to that. You'll go through maybe a short period. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have real issues,
right?
But you may have like a 3-4 day period of just depression or whatever else, and rather than self-medicate, there are probably some means of dealing with that. But having periods of times when you may feel like you're not in the best mental health doesn't necessarily, at least what I've read, doesn't necessarily mean you got a real problem. It's
a lot of times it can be situational,
right? Circumstances cause it. Yeah.
It's like, well, did a family member just pass away? Like, no, you don't have major depressive disorder. You are grieving, or whatever the case may be. But knowing how to bring yourself out of that little dark period is really important so that you don't get stuck there and it could become an issue later on.
I've been reading about this for the last couple of years. I guess I can thank y'all for that. But also the idea of grieving doesn't necessarily mean it's associated with the death of a loved one. It could be a death of a dream or something you really hope for didn't come to pass, or
the end of a relationship or a job.
Yeah, a job. Men in particular grieve when they lose a job, and they may not show it, but they're grieving in the exact same way they would if they lost a loved one. Or I read about people going through massive grief when they lost a pet. And I know that because we had to put our dog down about 3 years ago, and I thought, well, it's a dog, and I found myself legitimately grieving, So
yeah, my cat is my baby. I don't know what I'm gonna do. She's only 3, so
my daughter's like that with her cats. They're her comfort pets or whatever.
Yes.
But that might be something to talk about, is the process of grief.
Yes. Last year we had a session on grief. This year, I feel like a lot of our sessions are more towards togetherness and those social connections, kind of trying to pull people out of that isolation and encourage them to make connections with other people.
How would they make these connections? I mean, getting on Facebook or TikTok or whatever is not really what you're talking about, isn't it?
No, not exactly.
In-person connection.
Right.
Yeah,
And so we are having Valerie Hope. She is a friend of mine that I've made, and she's going to be talking about how to make friends as an adult.
It's something that most people don't think about it. I have adult friends, but tomorrow, in fact, I'm going to see some guys that I've known since we were about 14. And
That's awesome.
and we went to high school and college together, and so we're lifelong friends. And I got a couple others that are lifelong friends, but I do have adult friends. I have them through my Sunday school class. That's a big source of friends. I think a lot of people, they talk about how church attendance is declining dramatically, and I think it's having negative impacts not just on your spiritual life but also on what you're talking about, because churches provided a lot of social activities, and
And I do feel like that. I feel like a lot of people go to church for more than just getting filled every week on Sunday. It's about making those connections with other people that walk in faith as well, and developing that fellowship with other like-minded individuals.
And like we kind of talked about this before the show a little bit, but now that, working from home is the new thing. Everyone wants to work from home. Sometimes church is the only time they actually leave their house.
Right.
Or get out of there, other than to, drop and pick their kids up off of school or whatever. But, we've created like an ongoing sense of isolation, even past whenever we were, actually quarantining ourselves and stuff during COVID. We've continued that isolation, and that is just having so many negative effects on our social skills, or our feelings, and just feeling like you belong and like that anyone cares about you. If you never see anyone, it's really hard to feel that connection with someone.
Right. You don't even have to get out of the car to get groceries anymore.
I know, which I don't like doing for a lot of reasons. That's not the social activity. I like to pick out my own produce, thank you. But as far as, but you're right. I mean, it's, you can really live in a very isolated cocoon situation if you let it happen. And, and again, we talked about this at the very beginning of the show about how COVID did so much of that damage to everything, because I'm also reading that it's not just church attendance that's declining, but also participation in civic clubs and whatever else. I know of people that talk about how their group is declining in number. We talk about it being 9. The fact is, a lot of people would like to do what we're doing at our networking group, but they don't want to get out and actually show up because they have these issues, and that's concerning. Another concern would be the affordability of trying to get treatment. Okay, and what we're talking about here, that doesn't necessarily mean you need to spend a lot of money doing it, right?
Right.
It's just, these are coping techniques and helping techniques to get out and try to make these friends and acquaintances.
Exactly. And many of our breakout sessions offer things that you can do on your own without just recommending a lot of outside help. But we will also have a bunch of resource tables there for different facilities that offer free to low cost services, or just ideas on how to, taking those next steps.
As well as even some social groups are going to be there. We're going to have the Burleson Book Club come. I believe a crochet group will be there. We're trying to get some more, to where people can, they can get all motivated, right? And then the next day, that motivation's gone, the conference is over, nothing happened. But we want people to take that first step, sign up for a Tuesday evening class, or sign up for something that you can immediately start doing to help, put yourself out there. That's the hardest part, is the first time putting yourself out there. It's always, at least for me, super anxiety ridden.
Well, it's, you talk about meeting people and whatever else. I'm gathering that, some of these matching programs on online, like Match.com, whatever else, I know people that have met their spouses that way, so it does work, but that's not really what you're talking about here. You're not talking about, online friends. You're talking about sitting down across the table and having a cup of coffee type friends,
right? A real connection. And I think even with those apps, you can match with someone, talk to someone, and still not really know them. Catfishing is a thing online.
I had to be taught what that meant, but there's a lot of these terminologies, and,
it's hard to keep up.
Yeah, it is. All this youth lingo.
Oh, don't get me started.
No, it's like, what are you talking about? I made mistakes before trying to act like I know what I'm talking about. in front of the kids and my students, and they'd say, Allard, that's not what that means.
Yeah, I've done the same with some middle schoolers. They had to tell me I was out of date. So.
Yeah, well,
No risk.
Yeah.
well, one weekend I watched a couple of movies on Netflix, and then they said, Allard, what you do this weekend? I'm Netflix and chilled. And, and they go, God, and I thought I meant watching a movie and hanging out, right? And they're just looking like, he really didn't know what he said, did he? So
that is pretty embarrassing.
Yeah,
it's hard to come back from that, especially with kids.
They said, let's explain what that means. And I'm like, oh my Lord, I didn't even mean to imply that, But that's just.
That's funny. I mean, one of our sessions will be about building the parent-child relationship and communication and keeping that open line of communication and being empathetic and making sure that your children also have a voice.
Mm-hmm.
Another session I'm really excited about is our agree to disagree. As we all aware, the election's coming up, and that
really?
tends to really.
Taylor, why didn't you tell me this?
I mean, I tried to tell you. I told you about and then I said, but then you.
Okay, fine. It's like, oh, well, I know you're right, though, because, when I talk on more of my political shows, shall we say, with either candidates or me ranting and raving, it really has caused a lot of breakup of relationships.
There's just a divide in this country, and it's not so more of like, okay, well, you believe that, but you're still a person. It's like, you believe that, you're bad, you're evil, you're wrong, it's more of an attack, it seems like these days.
Well, I have some friends that don't agree. I don't agree with politically, and they don't agree with me, but we're still good friends, but because that tells a lot about the kind of people they are.
Maturity.
But, but there's also people that I don't talk about stuff like that because I know that I'll be ostracized immediately from their presence. And I'm also thinking, do I really want to be in their presence if they're going to be that kind of people? But there are certain occasions you just don't bring it up anymore.
Right.
Well, I feel like there's certain people that are just real quick to cut somebody off, and you don't agree, so we can't be friends.
Yeah, well, that's why a lot of people don't participate in Facebook anymore. I mean, all these arguments on there, and then, well, if you believe that, you must be, a terrible person. Or
those resident groups on Facebook are lots of gossip there.
Yeah, I don't. There's one in particular I avoid, and they avoid me too. So it's a mutual thing. But no, there's a couple on there that are actually pretty well monitored to keep that kind of junk off. But see, it kind of goes back to what you're talking about, though, because when you want to say, well, I think this about something, or I like this candidate over that candidate, and they get flamed online, it's very unpleasant, and it adds to the problems you're talking about, and it makes it more isolated.
And online, it's so much easier to be this like big bad individual and say all of this stuff, and then you would never say that in person to someone's face. It's really easy to look at people online as they're like not human, like they're less than human when you're talking to them. But I mean, aside from that won't dive into politics. It's not a political session, but just
absolutely not.
Talking more about communication and how to just mature in your communication and be able to recognize your differences, but then still treat people like they deserve to be treated.
Right. And
Conflict resolution.
Yeah, conflict resolution. That's a big one because, aside from politics, there's other reasons why families and friends have real problems, particularly in families. And they need to have conflict resolution, or between spouses, all that. Does this seminar address any of those kind of things?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We're also going to be having a class on managing perfectionism, caring for yourself as a caregiver, and that goes way beyond being a parent. It's I know my niece and I cared for my parents as they were aging, and that gets isolating in itself.
It's interesting to bring that up because tonight Camille Bransom's having her podcast, and I'm going to be the guest.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we're talking about caring for aging parents. And my sister carries the bigger load, but they live in Corsicana. My sister lives about 2 minutes from them. I live, way over here. But, that's she's doing a series on caring for older parents, and so I'm the guest because my dad has dementia. And, he had 86 as of last Sunday. And so it's interesting. So that's a little plug for Camille. What time did it show go on? 8:30? Is that when Kicking It comes on?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll be here. I'll be sitting on the other side for a change. And it's, but that is a stressor. I mean, I talked to my sister. I talked to my cousin that did this for my aunt for about 5 years. And it was a daily thing. And as it got more and more, my aunt progressed more and more, regressed, I guess is the word. It got even harder. And I just, at my age, we're still taking care of our adult children too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we take care of our adult parents.
And it's like, at what point do you take care of yourself? Where does that fit in? There's only 24 hours in each day. So,
yeah. So,
Exactly. I mean, you care for other people that are sick, or, you can care for maybe you have somebody that goes through addiction or recovery, and you're having to care for them through that. But it's also very important to pour into yourself, or you're going to have nothing to give.
How would you advise pouring into yourself? I mean, when you say that phrase, what does that entail? Is it like pursuing some sort of outside activity that you enjoy, like gardening perhaps, or is it?
Well, I'd say for different people, of course, it's going to look differently.
All right.
Sometimes I like to volunteer my time, and I know that kind of seems counterproductive, but just focusing on somebody else and giving that smile to somebody else helps me. But also, having that quiet time or learning to say no when you can. I mean, there's going to be a lot of things that you're going to be required to, or that, is going to be asked of you or expected of you, that does make it hard to say no. But there's things that you can say no to that you don't have to take on. You don't have to be perfect. And healthy boundaries are okay.
Well, I mentioned gardening because that's what I'm doing. It's a good distraction, and I'm not very successful at it. I'm not exactly, having a ton of produce on it yet, but it's something to do. I'm not a yard fanatic, but I like to keep the yard decent and all that. So those are the things. And also I do like to read history, because you got all this crap going on now, so you're going to read about crap that went on then, and it's their problem.
Right.
And you probably know the outcome, but so I do that. So I have counseling. I go through counseling now.
Counseling is a good one.
Yeah, and
journaling for a lot of people.
I think sometimes
Music.
taking the time to figure out what it is for you. I think sometimes we get so detached from ourselves, which sounds weird, but it's like you don't even know yourself. You don't know what you enjoy anymore because you haven't taken time in ages to do something that you actually enjoy for yourself.
Well, we talked about this before, but men my age, particularly my generation, we're very resistant to counseling or any other kind of treatments. Like you just,
Yes. Yes, you
you're
are.
a man, you're supposed to, take care of this stuff. My father didn't need to do that and all this other stuff. And, and you just don't, and, you just think of the troubles as part of life, and you don't think about trying to work on them.
You're just supposed to strap your boots up and keep going. Yeah.
And the thing about counseling also is I don't do it. I haven't been doing it like the last decade consistently. I do it as needed. All right. I'm doing it now, but it's the first time I've done it in about 6 years. And why am I doing it now? Well, I needed it. And, was there anything going on in my life? Nothing more than unusual, but maybe I wasn't dealing with it as well as I had been. And so let's try to get back on the rails before I end up in a ditch somewhere. And this is more preventative than it is curative, so to speak.
Well, and I think, we are a prevention agency. It's so much easier to prevent a problem than to try to solve it once it's been started, to try to catch those people, as we call it, upstream before they float all the way down the river, and just preventative health care is a thing. We go get checkups. We go get, certain things done to make sure that we're doing everything we should be doing. And we need to be doing the same with our mental health. And
then sometimes, they'll say, well, what's the problem? And you said, I just don't feel right, but I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it. It isn't one event that triggered it or anything. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's just a general feeling. And so my advice is that if you go through these things, even if it's, like you mentioned earlier, it's circumstantial or what's going on in your life, it helps to talk to somebody about this. And sometimes you need to talk to somebody that's non-judgmental and objective and not part of your life, so to speak, part of the problem.
Right.
I like to think of my counselor as an impartial friend. They will help you sort through things, or even call you out. Like, you think you're doing this, or, you say you're being mindful and caring for yourself, but are you really? Because none of those things are really caring for you.
sometimes these problems also are not just mental or psychological, they are spiritual. And so I think it's important, though, if you're thinking of spiritual problems, you still should talk to somebody that is trained and licensed and will be objective and will bring in the psychology of the situation, because nothing makes a person feel worse when, you're just not praying hard enough or you're not living right. Thanks for that. Just added more guilt, right? But, if you wanted a spiritually based counseling, you still should have a counselor that's going to bring in the psychological and mental aspects of it, all right, as opposed to, read Timothy here and, that should solve your problem.
Right.
It didn't work that way.
No, it doesn't.
And I love advising people to build that bridge beforehand, start those connections, those relationships, because you don't want to have to try to find a counselor or somebody that you trust that you can sit down and talk with when you're in the middle of a crisis. Right after say something happens and you lose your spouse traumatically in an event. You don't want to have to be waiting 2 weeks for an appointment to just be able to talk to somebody.
Also, we were at the end, I want to talk about it. Accessibility. I have been to Promises here in town, and it is, it's related to the First Baptist Church, but you can go there for non-spiritual reasons, if you will. But I'm fortunate that I have insurance that will cover it, wherever, and the current situation I'm in now also is covered. What about people that don't have coverage or can't afford it or whatever else? Is this seminar going to help them find places to go to that maybe could take lower income people, because they desperately need this type of help, but they can't afford it or they can't find the time for it if they're working two jobs.
Right.
Is this seminar going to help them find places like that?
Yes. So we will have vendors there that they can meet with and talk to, possibly schedule their first appointment, In addition to the conference, though, I do want to say something coming for Johnson County is going to be an online database for all the nonprofits, all the services, all the offices in Johnson County. Tarrant County has one. It's called tarrantcares.org, and we're going to be doing something similar for our county. That's upcoming in the next couple months, but that's going to help, not only will it help people get the care they need, but then on the back end, people in the field can see okay, the biggest need in Johnson County this month was food security. Right. Everyone was looking for food pantries or food banks. Or this month it was mental health care. You can actually pinpoint where the problems are and the demographics and the location.
Well, it is. The pantries are in need. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm really glad about that, because that they're going to have this source to go for that. And then after the show is over, I could tell you at another place you might want to place your material on. But it just... a lot of people think, well, I can't afford it. Or, I work nights and days. I have 2 jobs. Or, a lot of these things, I work 40, 45 hours a week. I can't do it at night. Or I got kids. Whatever the excuse is, right? They need to know that there's places they can go to. Now, you were talking about the grants that you're receiving from the state of Texas primarily. Is the state of Texas stepping up its game on mental health? I have a feeling I know the answer. But
they're dragging their feet.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
I will say in our statement of work with our grants, we have seen more ability to address mental health or unemployment, hard to hire populations, because it's all a cycle. It's addiction and homelessness, and it's a cycle that people continue to be stuck in without the proper help. And I think that they are trying to recognize it. They're trying. Maybe the next grant cycle in 5 years will have more mental health written into it, but...
Well, come on in. No, we got people. So we got a delivery here. Yeah, okay, Taylor. All right. Thank you. No, it's a very informal show, right? You could tell. All right. Anyway, he had his lunch delivered, so whatever.
Are you hungry, Taylor?
Well,
I'm here all day.
All right. Well, to kind of finish this up, though, so that this seminar, you don't necessarily need to be in a certain state of mind, but if you think that you might be.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, but if you think you're heading that way, you think it might be, you think you have a loved one that is, this is going to be prevention. And that's connection, all these things. This is a place to be a week from Saturday, isn't it?
And it's also just going to be a fun event. So maybe none of the above. met your criteria, but we're going to have food trucks. We're going to have different crafts. We're going to be making little gardens. We're going to do a bracelet station, kind of like the, little Taylor Swift friendship bracelets.
Oh, my.
We're going to have some popcorn.
Childcare, right?
Childcare, free childcare. So come drop off your kids and have like a nice little adult day.
Yeah.
Just come and see us.
How long would this seminar last?
At 9 to 4. You'll be out of there by 4, but if you have to leave early, don't let that stop you from coming at all. Just come for the morning if that's all you can.
Or
the
afternoon.
Yeah, just show up when you can, right?
Yeah. We'd love to have you.
I have to check the football schedule. So, So anyway, it was great talking to y'all. I know you'll have a successful seminar.
Thank you.
And you're talking about expansion into Johnson County? No, Hill County.
Hill
Sorry.
County,
Yeah,
yes.
Hill County. I'm looking at Johnson County right now. No, Hill County and Ellis County.
Yes.
You're just going to be taken over, aren't you?
Well, and we are also going to be diving headfirst into a tobacco-related grant that we got for Johnson County. That's really going to work on preventing vapes and other kind of nicotine use with our kids.
That's another thing that never tempted me was cigarettes. I'm glad to say cigars, different story. And not just because Wild sponsors me, but every now and then a good cigar is pretty good.
Unfortunately, the strawberry cheesecake flavor tends to get our youth at least a little interested. It's definitely targeted for kids, the vapes.
Yeah, the vapes. Does Chris, Nathan have a strawberry flavored cigar? No, I don't think so. Or cheesecake flavored? No, they get the good stuff. Anyway, I wish you all the best success. It's going to be great. Next week, like I mentioned, I have Lisa Bolton House will be here from ASD. They got stuff going on. They got a pickleball tournament coming up very quickly. Also, a week from today, we're going to have Colin Gregory with a fentanyl recovering ex-addict. She's volunteering her time and she's making herself known, and she's starting to speak out about fentanyl and whatever else. So it's going to be a very productive week, I hope. So hope to see y'all there.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.